guys, I'm Ariane, and today I thought I would take you through some of my all-time favorite books. Fair warning, some of these might be series, some of these might be standalone books, but all up, they're just my favorite stories of all time. By the way, these aren't my only favorite books ever. This is just a small selection of ones I think you guys should read. These are in no particular order, by the way. This is just the order that I picked them up in from my shelf. First up is a duology that I think will surprise no one, but that is The Strange the Dreamer duology by Laini Taylor. In these books we follow Laszlo Strange, an orphan and junior librarian who is obsessed with the city of Weep. It weaves in its own mythology and folklore, and it's all about stories and finding the mysterious city of Weep. It's fantastic and completely unputdownable. Laini Taylor is one of my all-time favorite authors. I absolutely adore her. I have the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, which I also love, but it doesn't quite make this list because this is my favorite of hers for sure. Now, I know her writing isn't for everyone, but it really is for me. I love how flowery and beautiful it is. I love how mystical it all feels. For those people who do think it's too flowery, I see where you're coming from. I totally get it. Personally, I just love it. I think it's so beautiful, and it's just a fun thing to read. It's so lyrical. It's like listening to a song. Our two main leads, Laszlo and Sarai, are as beautiful as the language used to describe them. They are just so sweet, and I can feel their hearts, and they're gorgeous characters, and I'm really glad that they've been brought into my life. Laszlo in particular was so easy for me to love. He is a storyteller and a story gatherer, and I just absolutely love it. As someone who's a writer and a reader myself, reading stories about stories is so enjoyable to me. I think the nature of stories and the nature of human nature to love stories is so fascinating, and I'm really, really happy I read it. I also have the other one, Muse of Nightmares, the other book, and as you can see, I have tabbed it very much. Next up is my favorite series, I think, of all time, and that would be the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. I have an entire V.E. Schwab shelf here. I absolutely adore her, and this is my favorite of all her works. If you're not aware, these are set in a multi-reality world where there are 4 Londons stacked on top of one another, and there are some very rare few who have the ability to travel between these Londons and experience all the different realities. There's magic and action and intrigue, and it's just an absolutely fantastic series. I think my favorite would have to be the second one, A Gathering of Shadows. It was so good. The characters are amazing, from Kel to Holland to Rye, but of course my queen, Lila Bard. I absolutely love her. She's my favorite character possibly ever written. I've seen in reviews people say she's a bit much, and I see where they're coming from, but I disagree. I think she's amazing, and I want the world for her. She's cutthroat and quick and refuses to take any crap, and she's everything I want to be. Her relationship with Kel is also such a fantastic part of these books. I really enjoyed seeing them grow together and learn about each other and learn about the world that they live in, who they are, and their chemistry was just so off the charts, especially a certain scene in A Gathering of Shadows. Anyone who's seen it, I think you know what I mean. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And V.E. Schwab has announced that she is writing a sequel trilogy to this called Threads of Power. It's going to be fantastic. I'm so excited to read more about these characters and where they've been in the years that we've been missing them. I can't recommend this enough. Please pick it up, please, for your own good, pick it up. Okay, next is a standalone story. It's The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. So this is a portal fantasy, basically, and this is set in the early 20th century in America and also elsewhere. We follow a girl named January who is the ward of a mysterious rich older man, and she feels really out of place in life. She doesn't really know where her home is or her family, and then she discovers a book that seems to have been written just for her, and things go from there. I would say this is my favorite standalone fantasy of all time. It's a modern fantasy. Well, it's magical realism, I suppose. It's all these things and more. The only real experience I'd had with portal fantasy was like Narnia when I was younger, so this was definitely different, but I've discovered that I absolutely love it. You can tell I have tabbed the hell out of it. The writing was really beautiful, not overly flowery like with Strange the Dreamer, but still really pretty enough that I could just lose myself in the prose. January was such a beautiful, relatable character. I loved her so much, and the whole story really gives you this sense of wanderlust. You just want to travel when you read it, which isn't great in the here and now, but when I did read this, we could travel, and it was just so fantastic. I went to Italy a few years ago on holiday before the whole COVID thing, And this book reminds me of that so much. These little towns on the edge of these mountains near the water, the salt in the air, it's just everything about it reminds me of being over there and being in these exotic, beautiful places. It's something I would absolutely recommend, even if we can't travel at the moment. Reading's like traveling, sort of, isn't it? Kind of. Anyway, so glad I picked this up. Definitely one I'm going to recommend for till forever. Okay, next is a standalone romance and the only contemporary romance I have on this list for now, and that is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I adore this book and I can't quite articulate why, but I just love it so much, so let's go into it. This story follows Josh and Lucy, who work in an office and tend to butt heads quite a lot, but there's a lot of tension beneath the surface, and when there is announced that there is a job opening up in a higher position, they fight to the death no, I'm kidding. When they realize only one of them can get the promotion that they're up for, things come to a head. This is my favorite contemporary romance ever, which is very ironic because I would have to say there are a lot of tropes in here that in other books I don't tend to like. So it's kind of ironic that I like this one so much. I can't articulate as such exactly what it is about this one that just absolutely enthralled me. I would say it's more of a feeling than any articulable reason. The characters are funny and they're cute and the banter between them is top notch, and the way their relationship evolved throughout the story was so entertaining. I loved it. My favorite scene is the paintball scene. If you've read it, you know what I mean. Such a good scene, such a good book. Absolutely 10 out of 10 would recommend. Next up we have a sci-fi rec. Now anyone who knows me knows I love sci-fi. Stargate SG-1 is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. And so I was looking for something that could replicate the same sort of sci-fi high stakes in book form, and one of the first things I picked up when I started getting into reading was Defy the Stars by Claudia Gray. This is a science fiction romance story set in a galaxy at war. We follow Nomi, who's a soldier and a fighter pilot, and we also follow Abel, who is basically a warrior robot. They're on opposite sides of the war, but they get thrust together, stranded on a desolate ship, and they have to work together to save Nomi's home planet. I don't know if I would call this a space opera, but it was very close. One of the first things I read that kind of showed me what that was like. I read it in a single day. I remember when I read this, I went to the drag races with my dad and my siblings, and it was raining and I had an umbrella and I tucked it into my arm and I just read while the drags were happening in front of me, and I just read and read and read, and I finished it while we were there in the matter of 4 hours. Characters were really sweet. The relationship built between them seemed really believable considering one is a robot and one is a human. One thing I really liked about the story is that the stakes felt really high. It didn't feel cheap. It felt like there was actually things at stake in this war and in this community, in this galaxy. It's the first in a series. I have the other 2 books. I have not read them yet, please don't at me, but I plan on reading them soon. I'm going to reread this hopefully in the next month or so, and then get to the second and the third books in the trilogy. Okay, last up is one that shouldn't really surprise anyone. It's the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I'm aware this is not the first one. I lent the first one to my sister. If my sister is watching, please give me back the first and second books of the series. I love you very much. Mwah, thank you. This is probably my favorite in the whole series, so I'm holding this one up. I've got the rest of them here. I'm pretty sure by now everyone and their dog knows what the Throne of Glass series is about. But basically the first one, in case you're unaware, is about Selena, who works in the salt mines, and she is plucked from them by the prince to compete in a competition to become the king's assassin. That's the first book anyway, but as you read the series it becomes something entirely different. Each book builds and builds upon this world until finally, by the last book, you just have so many characters you're following, so many plot lines, so many stories, so many relationships, and it completely transforms the story into what was about this girl Selena into what's now about this huge cast of wonderful fantasy characters. If for some reason you haven't read this yet, you should get on it if you like fantasy romance. I think it's one of the best done. I know that Sarah J. Maas gets a lot of flack, but I will defend her until the sun explodes. I absolutely adore her. She creates such wonderful worlds, particularly female character-wise. Her female characters are so empowered and so wonderful. Her stories have the perfect balance of action and intrigue and mystery and magic and romance to just completely hook me. I was in this series and I'm so glad that I was able to finish it. It took me a while, but I got there. As I said, this would be my favorite, or maybe Empire of Storms perhaps was also very, very good. Yes, I like this series a lot. Please read it if you haven't already. I think you would enjoy it. Anyway guys, that is a small collection of some of my all-time favorite books and series. What are some of your all-time favorite books and series? I would love to hear them. I'm always looking for recommendations. Please put them in the comment section down below. I would love to hear. As always, you can follow me on my socials. They'll be down below. And I'll see you guys with another one soon. Bye!